All right, let's talk about something truly wild, the Great Emu War. Yep, you heard that right. It's the story of how Australia, a modern nation, somehow managed to lose a war to birds. Seriously.
I mean, think about it. Can a whole country actually lose a war to a bunch of birds? It sounds like a punchline, right? You've got trained soldiers, military strategy, machine guns, and their enemy is, well, a flock of birds? There's just no way, right?
Well, wrong. It's not a joke. This actually happened. Back in 1932, Australia found itself in a full-on military standoff with its native emus. And let me tell you, the ending is probably not what you're thinking.
Okay, so how in the world did we get here? How does a country declare war on birds? Well, what started out as let's call it a wildlife management program, quickly blew up into something the newspapers started calling a legitimate war.
So let's set the scene. It's 1932, deep in Western Australia. A bunch of World War I veterans have been given plots of land to start a new life as farmers. But it's tough. I mean, it's the Great Depression, conditions are brutal, and these guys are barely scraping by. Their entire livelihood is on the line. And just when they think it can't get any worse, an enemy shows up.
And we're not talking about a couple of birds pecking at their crops, no. For these struggling farmers, this was a full-blown invasion, a crisis of epic proportions.
Get this, an estimated 20,000 emus, an army of them, migrating right through these brand new wheat farms. They were tearing down fences, gobbling up the crops, basically destroying everything these veterans had worked for. It was a plague of giant flightless birds. So the farmers are desperate. They're begging for help. And the government decides to step in with, well, a very direct solution. They send in the military. The Royal Australian Artillery, to be exact. They show up with 2 heavy-duty Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammo. It was officially on. Machine guns versus feathers. So let's break down the two sides, right? In one corner, you've got the Australian Army, trained soldiers, military strategy, machine guns. And in the other corner, a giant flock of emus. Their weapons, thick feathers, and, as it turns out, some pretty sneaky guerrilla tactics. I mean, on paper, this looks like a total blowout. Should have been over in an afternoon, tops.
But yeah, that's not what happened. Not even close. The soldiers very quickly realized that their feathered opponents were way tougher than they looked. This was not going to be a walk in the park.
You see, the emus were surprisingly clever. The second the soldiers would open fire, this giant mob of birds would just explode. They'd scatter into tons of tiny groups, running in every direction. It was impossible to get a beat on them. And here's the crazy part. Even if you did manage to hit one, their feathers were so thick, they acted like a kind of natural body armor. Bullets would literally just bounce off or not do enough damage.
It was a total mess for the military. The emus were just too fast, too unpredictable. The soldiers were burning through thousands of rounds of ammo and had almost nothing to show for it. It was embarrassing. The Australian Army was getting outmaneuvered by a bunch of birds. So, after a few weeks of this absolute disaster, the whole operation gets called off. You can imagine the newspapers had a great time with this one, just relentlessly mocking the whole thing. So, when the dust settled, what did the final score look like? Okay, check this out. The Australian military, with all its firepower, managed to take down maybe 1,000 emus. Out of 20,000, they barely made a dent. And the emus? They inflicted exactly 0 human casualties. From a military perspective, this was a complete, undeniable defeat.
Yep, it's as simple as that. The emus won. The soldiers packed up and went home. The operation was officially a failure, and the Great Emu War went down in history as this legendary, almost unbelievable story of human arrogance.
So what do we take away from this absolutely bizarre story? I mean, sure, it's a hilarious tale about underestimating your enemy, but it's also about something bigger, right? It's about the foolishness of thinking you can solve a problem of nature with brute force. It just goes to show you, nature is resilient, unpredictable, and sometimes it wins. Definitely something to think about.